On the morning of January 25th, 2019, the peaceful neighborhood of Tomball, Texas, would become the setting for a tragic event that has left investigators and loved ones searching for answers ever since. Elizabeth Barraza, known to her friends and family as Liz, was preparing for a garage sale, a routine event in her life. What no one could have anticipated, however, was that this ordinary morning would quickly turn into an unsolved murder case that has haunted those involved. Liz was a creative, kind-hearted woman who spent her free time dressing up as Star Wars characters, visiting sick children in the hospital to bring them joy. She had a loving relationship with her husband, Sergio Barraza, and they had been planning a much-needed vacation to celebrate their 5th wedding anniversary. But by the time the day was over, Liz would be gone, murdered in her driveway in broad daylight, and despite the investigation that followed, her killer has yet to be caught. It all began at around 7:20 a.m. on Friday, January 25th, 2019. Bob and Rosemary Nellie, Liz's parents, woke up to an unusual notification from their daughter's alarm system. The system had been triggered, but they thought it was a simple mistake. Perhaps Liz had accidentally activated it while setting up for the garage sale she was holding that day. But when they called Liz to check in, there was no answer. The alarm company also tried reaching her, but failed. The situation grew more unsettling when the alarm company directly contacted them, unable to get in touch with Liz. At this point, Rosemary authorized the company to notify the police. Bob and Rosemary rushed to Liz's home, a mere 15 minutes away, but they had no idea what they were walking into. As they drove, they got a call from Sergio, Liz's husband, who explained that he too had received the alert and, upon checking the doorbell camera footage, had seen police tape and first responders around the house. He used the camera's speaker to try and communicate with someone, but the response he received was cryptic and troubling. He was told to return home immediately. When Bob and Rosemary arrived at the scene, their worst fears were realized. Their daughter's usually quiet street was swarming with emergency vehicles. Police, paramedics, and detectives were all on the scene, and it was clear that something tragic had occurred. Officers informed them that a young woman had been airlifted to the hospital. As they approached the house, they could see a disturbing sight. A trail of blood on the driveway, mixed with items that Liz had set out for the garage sale. The critical detail they learned was that Liz had been shot. But what happened next was even more perplexing. The alarm had gone off only when officers entered the house through the unlocked door between the garage and the house, securing the scene. How had the alarm been triggered? Was this a random crime, or something much more sinister? As the police began their investigation, the situation took a darker turn. Liz had been found in the driveway, barely alive, but in critical condition. The officers who responded to the 911 calls were the first to find her. They were the ones who set off the alarm when they entered the home. It became clear that this wasn't just a random act, it was an execution. Liz was rushed to the hospital, but it was evident that she wasn't going to survive. Doctors told her parents that she had been shot 4 times, once in the neck, twice in the chest, and finally in the head. Her wounds were too severe, and despite her being rushed to the hospital, Liz was declared dead on January 26, 2019 at 1:40 p.m. Now, the Harris County Sheriff's Department took over the investigation, and it wasn't long before they started questioning Sergio. He was immediately identified as the husband, and therefore the prime suspect. But despite being a prime suspect, Sergio was cooperative. He provided police with access to their home, their phones, and Liz's phone, which had been with her at the time of the attack. There was no evidence of an affair or any serious issues between the couple. On the surface, everything seemed to point to an unfortunate tragedy that no one could have foreseen, but something wasn't right. The first significant break in the case came from the footage that Liz's doorbell camera had captured. At 6:08 a.m. on the morning of the shooting, Liz had gone to Starbucks. She returned home, and shortly after, she began setting up for the garage sale. Sergio left for work at precisely 6:48 a.m., heading to a Lowe's store about 5 miles away. This is where things started to get strange. Around 6:52 a.m., just minutes after Sergio had left, a dark-colored pickup truck pulled into the neighborhood. The truck first passed Liz's house, then made a U-turn, parked at the curb, and a figure stepped out. This figure, according to the footage, appeared to be wearing a disguise. They were dressed in what looked like a flowy coat or robe, paired with go-go boots, and perhaps a wig or long hair. This was not a typical outfit, and the police were confused. Was the shooter male or female? The video quality was poor, so it was difficult to determine any distinguishing features. The shooter approached Liz in the driveway. The footage shows Liz greeting the person with a cheerful, "Good morning," and then there's a brief exchange of words before 4 deafening gunshots are heard. Liz screamed, and the shooter fled the scene. The entire encounter lasted less than a minute. The shooter ran back to their truck, which was still running, and drove away quickly. What was chilling was the fact that the shooter doubled back, driving past the house again just minutes after the 911 calls had been made. Why would someone do this? It seemed like a strange and unnecessary move, almost amateurish, but it had serious consequences. Because of this second pass, a neighbor had a clear view of the truck, and police were able to confirm that it was a Nissan Frontier, most likely black. With the footage and descriptions of the truck, investigators believed they were close to solving the case. The truck had been parked near the scene of the crime, and the police had a good idea of what they were looking for. The big question, however, was, why did the killer double back? This seemed like a mistake, one that could have easily led to them being caught. Yet the suspect had managed to get away without leaving any substantial evidence behind. The footage from the neighbor's camera didn't show the license plate, and there was no other clear evidence to identify the driver. Sergio's cooperation was another mystery. He explained to detectives that he had become worried when he received the alert about the garage sale. He immediately checked the doorbell camera, hoping to see what was going on, but all he could hear were the 4 gunshots followed by Liz's scream. He offered the footage to the police, but it didn't bring them any closer to the killer. The police decided to investigate Liz's past to determine if anyone close to her could have been responsible. They questioned Sergio, asking him if there was anyone who had a grudge against Liz. Sergio mentioned a woman in the 501st Legion, a Star Wars fan group with whom Liz had a small dispute. But Sergio dismissed the idea, claiming the disagreement was insignificant and that it could never have escalated to murder. Investigators then considered the possibility of a robbery gone wrong. Liz had set up the sale to make extra money for a family vacation. She had a lockbox with $100 inside for change, but it was still there, untouched. This quickly ruled out the robbery theory. As detectives dug deeper, they uncovered a detail that would change the entire course of the investigation: Liz's life insurance policy. Through her employer, Liz had a policy worth $250,000. But what seemed like a small sum turned out to be much more significant. Since Liz had been murdered, the policy included a double indemnity clause, meaning the payout would double to $500,000. This discovery raised the question, did Sergio know about this life insurance payout? Sergio initially claimed that he didn't know how much the policy was worth. He insisted that it wasn't much, but the reality was that Liz had been encouraged by her father, Bob, to take out the policy when she started her job in 2014. Bob thought the coverage was a great deal, and it made sense for Liz to have it. However, whether Sergio knew about the double indemnity clause remained unclear. Detectives found no evidence that Sergio had any involvement in Liz's murder. His demeanor seemed off to investigators, but there was no proof that he had orchestrated his wife's death. He cooperated fully with the investigation, even passing a polygraph test. But the life insurance payout, combined with the strange behavior surrounding the garage sale, continued to make him the prime suspect in the case. As the investigation continued, a troubling theory emerged. Could Liz's father, Oscar Barraza, have played a role in his daughter-in-law's death? Oscar had been facing serious financial problems, and his marriage was falling apart. He was involved in multiple affairs, and his finances were suffering. Some speculated that Oscar had learned about the life insurance policy and saw it as a way to solve his problems. But when police investigated Oscar, they found no evidence to support this theory. Oscar denied any involvement in the crime, and while his actions were questionable, there was no direct link to Liz's murder. Oscar's alibi was confirmed by investigators, and there was no physical evidence tying him to the crime scene. With no clear answers, the investigation hit a wall. The mystery surrounding Liz's death persisted, and as the case continued to unravel, the Barraza family launched their own efforts to find justice. They set up a website, Who Killed Liz Barraza, and offered a $20,000 reward for information. Over the next few years, the case remained unsolved, but the family refused to give up hope. By 2023, Sergeant Michael Ritchie, who had been promoted to homicide detective, was reassigned to lead the investigation once again. He had been working tirelessly on the case, and he remained confident that someone had to know something. Despite the lack of solid leads, the theory that Liz was targeted rather than randomly killed still held strong. But who could have targeted her, and why? Theories abounded online. Some speculated that the shooter might have had access to the Barraza family's security camera system. Could the killer have been watching Liz in real time? Others wondered if Liz's murder was part of a gang initiation, a random act of violence meant to prove oneself. But none of these theories made sense. Everything about Liz's murder felt too personal. And now, as the years have passed, the question remains: who killed Elizabeth Barraza? The investigation continues, but as of today, the case remains unsolved. The mystery lingers, and the Barraza family still searches for answers. Every year that passes only deepens the sadness and frustration felt by those who knew and loved Liz. It's a case that has captured the attention of many, and one that will not be forgotten until justice is finally served.